What race do you identify with?
Asian.
African American.
Korean American.
I'm Boricua, which is descendant of the Taino Indians on the island of Puerto Rico.
I would usually say other, because I identify as West Indian.
Same as well since I'm Haitian. I usually just say
I identify as white. Asian.
Hispanic.
Black.
African American / black, if you would like to put color on it.
I identify as multiracial, both white and Asian.
I'm just Asian, full Asian.
Black. I'm Hispanic.
I'm Korean American.
I'm Chinese American.
Asian.
Asian.
White.
White.
Black.
White.
Caucasian.
Caucasian.
White.
White. That's
Me too.
Caucasian.
Middle Eastern.
White.
so Asian.
Have you ever heard of self-segregation?
So just the
Yes. Segregation.
I haven't.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I took a class where we talked about it last semester.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't not before this.
Yes. Yes. Segregation.
I have not.
Yes, I have.
Yes. I think so.
Yes.
Ladies first.
Yes. More what it is.
Yes.
No.
No.
Not too much, maybe a little bit.
Okay. Do you think self-segregation exists on this campus?
A little bit. Maybe with like the international community more so than like the people who are more who are like Asian, or just in my case like Asian American versus those who like came from Asia.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I mean, I guess technically, but I always thought it was more you like to be with people you're comfortable with, and if you're comfortable with your own race, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
I definitely think
Yes.
so.
Yes, I do. I think whether consciously or not, people divide themselves in terms of their social groups and their activities by race largely.
Oh, definitely there is. Yeah, especially like with organizations like CSA and HKSA, things like that.
Definitely.
Of course.
Most definitely. Yeah.
I'd say yes to a certain extent.
I would also say yes to a certain extent. Like, I mean, you have like those like Asian interest sororities and like African American interest sororities, but at the same time, and also fraternities, but at the same time, like they're not only made up of the people that are of that particular race or ethnicity, and it's all up to your own choice whether you want to join something like that. So it's you really very much have your own choice whether you want to be involved in that or not. It definitely does.
I think it does.
The thing is, like, segregation is a little bit more.
I think it's like most prominent with like international students.
Definitely. I'd agree.
I do.
Certainly.
Yes, I think it exists everywhere.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely happens on campus. It's not necessarily intentional, but happen.
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
To an extent, because there are plenty of organizations such as the Chinese Student Association or the Filipino Association or various like culturally diverse groups. But as again, it's more of those groups celebrating their diversity and they're open to everybody, and I think that's fantastic.
Do you think cause people self-segregate?
I think it's you share common bonds, you understand each other better because you have cultural links or family links. You get a better feel for each other.
I think it's a factor of like being comfortable. People usually gravitate towards something that they're used to, something that they are familiar with. So it's probably an issue of just trying to be comfortable, trying to find a place to fit in.
I think a lot of people come to this school and experience just a multitude of different people, different racial backgrounds. And I think it's really easy to connect with people who sort of share similar experiences and values with you. I think self-segregation is like an easy way to do that.
I think it's like a sense of community and you feel more comfortable with that group. So because you have more in common with them and it's more of a homey feel.
Especially with upbringing and how people are brought up in what communities they've probably been around ever since they were young. They're just so used to it and that's like their natural habitat, so it's a comforting thing to them, so they'll stick to it going forward.
I think a lot of it is just like a sense of community. I think a lot of students here like to feel community, so a good way to do it is self-segregation. I know CSA, it's like a place for Chinese students to get together, but also I think it promotes the, like you said, the traditions that they have back home. So it's also something that's unique for each organization.
I think for most people, it's, or for a lot of people at least, it might be what they're accustomed to.
I guess by race is like, depending on what kind of community you grew up in or the people that you grew up around, you just identify with those people. And race is one of those very like broad, general things that people can, see. So you gravitate to the people that are most like you.
Socioeconomic statuses, the variation, and being able to see how apparent that is, especially if you live in a place like Court K. Bauer. So,
I guess it's just being comfortable.
Like maybe if you're like in America for the first time, you like want to stay with people from your home country because it feels safer.
I think it's comfort. I think it's something you feel safe about it. You don't want to lose those traditions.
Yeah, it's just you're so comfortable with it back where you're from, especially for international students, that you just identify with them in multiple reasons compared to American students here.
I feel like most races feel comfortable with people who are like them, and so they interact with those people.
I think that based on race, you can kind of just look at a person and think that they're like yourself.
If you have roughly the same culture, I guess it's not the same as race, but if you have roughly the same culture, it's easier to get into a group that you're more comfortable with, and you're more comfortable usually with people of your own culture.
Culture. I think you see a lot of people from Asian cultures who congregate just because they speak Mandarin with one another, and it's their first language, so it's easier than English. Which I've had that experience before. I've traveled abroad. It's like you gravitate towards people who speak your language. So I don't know. I don't want to take a moral standpoint either way, but that's just what I see.
I'd say comfort. It's like kind of like the culture. Yeah, you know it. It's familiar to you. You're comfortable with it. So
if you've grown up with it, especially.
Basically, I think they feel comfortable that way, either culturally or just otherwise. It's comfortable.
Just forming a collective identity. I think it's like you relate to people who are from your race or socioeconomic class. So. And the two are related, definitely.
Well, as like sort of an international student, I think first would be the language barrier. And then second also because of the cultural differences.
Do you think it's a positive or a negative?
That's a tough question. I think it could be more negative than positive because while you self-segregate, you're kind of just promoting why people think you're different or other. And you're not giving, and at the same time, you're not giving others a chance to accept you, learn your value system, or learn your customs, that kind of stuff. So that sectioning off, although it's comfortable, it's kind of preventing that integration that we've been trying to get to, I guess.
I guess I'm opposite. I think it's positive because I think having your comfort zone is really important for like people's mental health, to just have a place where they could like feel comfortable. But I guess to speak to the point about it being negative in the self-segregating way, I feel like if you want to infiltrate into a new culture, there's options for you to do so. So if you want to learn about like an Asian culture, you can join those groups or those fraternities, because I've seen that happen. So it's not completely segregating.
I think it can be both. I think it could definitely turn into a negative if it becomes like a we're better than you mentality, like we stick together because we don't like you.
It could be both.
Yeah.
Negative, so you don't really actually get to meet people who are probably within the same backgrounds or interests as you, as well as broadening your knowledge as well. And it could also be a positive just to like learn, I guess you would say, learn from others, I guess, who I guess you really wouldn't associate with.
Yeah, I would say the same thing both, because what I think is positive is, especially being on this campus, is very stressful to know that you're not alone and people have come from the same background or share common interests and whatnot. It just makes you feel more comfortable. And then the negative is also, you don't get to meet as many people as you could if you didn't self-segregate.
I think it's definitely negative. I think it, suppresses people's exposure to other opinions, other worldviews, other experiences, in people's lives. And I think that it's definitely something that we should try to fight against when we realize that it's happening.
I think it can be both. I think the positive aspects of it is that it does promote traditions and lifelong aspects of your culture that is like promoting your well-being. But I think it could be negative in terms of that if you segregate yourself too much, then you won't expose yourself to other cultures around campus.
I'd hate to be that person to sit on the fence, but I think it has its positive aspects and negative aspects, especially I guess positive in the sense of the definition you provided, because it's kind of like you're doing it to preserve your culture, a way of thinking, but at the same time it also when you identify too much with a certain group, you do become very dogmatic in your thinking, and it kind of like slows things. Diversity.
I would say there's positive and negative aspects to it. In terms of the positive, you definitely come to understand the, I guess label is the word I would use, that you identify with. At the same time, the negatives of it are that you would only come to understand that if you become too just ingrained in that identity alone. So, yeah, both positives and negatives.
Yeah, I would also agree, both positive and negatives.
I think it can be both. It's negative if it's like too excessive. Yeah, too excessive.
But I mean, it can be positive because you do feel more comfortable. Some people like being able to be around people who are like them, so it can go both ways.
I think it's both. There are definitely negative aspects because you're not acclimating to a different culture that might have benefits, and I think it is a positive thing because it's keeping up traditions.
I agree with her. It's both. Like, I feel like for international students, they don't have the luxury to interact with American kid students, but at the same time, they're still keeping their traditions, what they've grown up with when in other countries.
I think it's a negative because I think it it kind of blocks you off to people who you might hang out with or learn something from or find something in common with. And by self-segregating, it's just kind of closes you off, and I think it's fine to hang out with whoever you want to hang out with, but if it's a conscious decision, definitely, then that's the negative part of it. But if it's if you're just identifying with someone of your race and they happen to be your friend, then I think that's fine.
I think negative only because if people are only interacting with people of their race, there won't be a mesh of just different people hanging out with different people.
It could be both, because if it's taken too extreme, then they'll be too exclusive and it's not really open to people, and they're really separating themselves from everybody else. But otherwise, I think it's a great thing because you get to celebrate other people's cultures and it's open to everybody.
I think it's good and bad, good in the sense that you can connect with people who share those values with you, but sort of bad in the sense that you don't get to reach out to that bigger community.
Neutral. I mean, it's going to happen, I think, regardless of whether it's negative or positive, so I don't think that it's a bad thing necessarily. And people are still, in an environment where they're exposed to different cultures, regardless of who they actually choose to associate with. And people definitely mix, there's not like there's no mixing, so.
I'd say it's got its pros and cons, I think that being exposed to different people and, mixing together, I think there's definite perks to it, but I guess it's all about preference. I don't think it should be something that should be forced on someone, but I also think it's something that people should be aware of and see the benefits of.
I think it can be both, but I mean, right now it kind of seems negative, but I think it has both uses.
I think in some ways it can be a positive and in some ways it can be a negative. I think that it offers people sort of an avenue to express themselves or to relate to other people and to be comfortable on campus. But in other ways I feel like it's cross-cultural dialogue is also really important for creating a campus that has a diversity of opinion.
I think it's a positive for the first bit when it helps people get used to the environment when they have their familiar groups. I think it's negative if it remains like that because we lose a lot if we only focus on our own race. And it's hard. It's easier for racism to thrive through that.